Yeah, so this is an old man regrets or decisions maybe I regret that I should have made differently when I was younger. So I covered in my other video I covered my movie media opportunities, and then this other one will be media related. So when I was raised, I went to a special school, kind of like a Juilliard type of school, and then I was trained in piano. So Beethoven, Mozart, all that other good stuff. But I was kind of punished in a way, like if I didn't practice a certain amount of hours every day. Plus, I had a really strict piano teacher. She was really nasty. And I learned by metronome. It goes back and forth to keep timing while you're learning the song. So I learned how to read sheet music, write sheet music, uh, compose songs. Not really compose that much, but play classical music and everything on the piano. And I lived in the city that was gray and dark, and 10 months a year were gray, overcast, darkness. And, you know, the type of place where people, if the weather was bad, people would call in sick to work just to get out in the sun for a day. So, anyways, my parents put a condition on me that I had to practice 1 to 2 hours a day before I was allowed to go out and play with the other kids. So I had music lessons forced on me and then not allowed to go out and play. So I had some anger in my playing, I guess you might say. But I did learn to train my ear, and I learned for professional school, and I learned music and all that stuff. And then, I actually grew up and moved out of the house about 16. I moved out, and so naturally, I needed to get all that stuff out that they forcing me to learn music. So what do? You grab an electric guitar and an amp, and you distort it to as far as you can. That is natural. And then what type of music do you pick? You pick punk rock. You go the opposite direction. From a Beethoven, you go directly into punk rock, a Sex Pistols, DOA, Dead Kennedys, so far and so forth, and all that stuff. And you go into hard rock. I was into hard rock too, and all that stuff, and Floyd and some other bands and all that. And so I picked up the electric guitar and started distorting it and blasting it through my headsets and everything. Actually, where I lived once I moved out of my parents' place, I could, if I just closed the doors and everything up, I could crank it up and all that. So we had a local magazine, it's an alternative magazine back when they had magazines. It was like published once a week or twice a week. It was called The Rocket, Rocket, and it had classifieds in the back, and so it was musicians looking to get together and form bands, or just musicians looking forward to jamming, or musicians just getting together to do gigs. It had a and things for sale, so it had a classifieds in the back, and this alternative music, this alternative paper that wrote non-mainstream articles and had radically different positions on political things and views and things going on compared to mainstream and all that. So to give you an idea, so I got tired. I got good on guitar, reasonably good after a few years, And I got tired of playing by myself. I just felt like I was playing with myself if I was like playing with myself, you know what I mean by that. And I wanted to branch out and get into other bands and stuff and get and practice, at least find a practice partner and do riffs and practice with, or a drummer or bass player or whatever. And so the most common, they're looking for drummers, of course. And then the second most common is bass players. And then the third is guitarists. And then singers is somewhere in between there and all this and that and all that. And most of the guitar stuff was taken. And that's what was really high end. They wanted like 15, 20 years of experience, which I didn't have on the axe. So this band said looking for second guitarist, second backup guitarist, rhythm. So actually, they said looking for a bassist. Actually, that's what they said. Yeah, so that's what they said, looking for a bassist. So I go and I audition for this guy, and I think he's got 6 punk songs already, vocals, melody, shifts, changes, everything. He's got 6 songs composed, and he handed me a bass, and I played that and everything. And then after about, I don't know, 15 minutes, he goes, I just don't think I could use you as a bass player. That's what I auditioned as a bass player. He goes, and I knew I wasn't a good bass player because I didn't have the strength in my fingers. And also, I didn't own a bass and I didn't practice bass. So it was a combination of the both. And so he said, let me hear you play some guitar. Because it turns out, I guess he was considering having a guitarist too, or a rhythm guitarist. So it was like, he didn't really necessarily want one, but he would, I guess he maybe he was looking for a more fuller sound. So I played guitar for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And he said, you're the rhythm guitarist as of now. So we were together as a unit. And so then it was a matter of finding a bass player and a drummer. And we went through 2 drummers, and then we got tight with the drummer and us. And then we were composing songs. So we get together. There's a place in Washington State underneath the Ballard Bridge called the Music Bank. And you could rent out a studio for $200 a month. And you got a key to your room. And it was in an industrial area. So you could go in at 3 o'clock in the morning drunk and just jam until you pass out and crash out in your studio. There was like no time limit. But the funny thing was is the walls weren't that well insulated, so you didn't want to do recording in there. If you're doing recordings, it was just like a jam place. It was called the Music Bank in Seattle, Washington. So we rented a room, and I paid, and I think he wanted somebody to help pay the room rental too. Was why he wanted his second guitar. So he wanted a place to jam because he couldn't jam where he was at loud, like we younger folks like to play. And I'm surprised I have any hearing. And so we got a good drummer, and then we eventually we got a bass player, and he just fit in like a hand in a glove. And the drummer was a hard hitter, and we were doing punk rock, and we were doing successful. And so me and him and the bassist and the drummer would all compose together. So we started writing songs, and then we'd have like a playlist, and then we started doing some taping, and then we do shows. We had to have a demo tape for shows, so we just made a primitive demo tape, and then we started playing gigs, and then we had like a playlist. And then if we would just go by the audience, like if we were doing, if the audience was like really into that song, we'd keep it, and then if the audience wasn't really into another song, then we'd drop it or we'd give it a few tries. So we recorded a reciprocal recording and did our first professional where you lay down the tracks in a studio, and we did a professional recording our first album. It was getting airplay, and so we went from zero just together within 90 days to becoming famous. It was unheard of. I mean, people try for years being musicians and try in and out of different bands and everything to get famous, and we're only together 4 months and we're playing for 1,000 people for that size of a city, and 700 people and 500 people. We're playing clubs and we're booked and we're getting airplay. So we are overnight, 4 months, overnight success, famous, just slapped together band. And we weren't signed yet. We weren't signed to a label. But we were touring out of a van and everything and all that stuff. So we were becoming famous. And so Lane Staley from Alice in Chains worked at Music Bank. You know who that is. And we would play warm up for Kurt Cobain, Nirvana, and then we played shows with Soundgarden. So we were in the original grunge movement, basically. But we were a punk band. And I personally liked, as a musician, I personally like a cross between punk, metal, rock, and grunge are kind of my influences, my preferences, as far as what I want to hear. If I'm playing what I like, if I'm not like a sellout, like I'm not playing for market, I'm playing for what I like to play. And so we started butting heads a little bit because the grunge movement was growing like crazy. And Soundgarden, Nirvana, and Alice in Chains. Lane he'd come in and hear me jam. I would open up a lot of controversy if I talked about some of this, but I was just friends with those people. I knew Lane would hear me jam or whatever, and what all that. So we were in the grunge movement, so we were there. Then I was having disagreements with, when we were writing material, is I wanted to mix between grunge and punk and rock. Grunge to me was like an alternative. It was the most freeing because I was rebellious, because I was forced to do classical music. So I wanted the most artistic, creative way to release my creative talent. I had the ability to write music, so we'd get together and we'd have jam sessions, and they'd say, well, that doesn't sound punk enough. So we were already having a little bit of beefs because I was going more towards the grunge. Part of it was what I wanted to cash in on those platinum records that those guys were getting, and gold records and all that stuff, and money those guys were getting. And part of it was I just like playing that type of music. So we were butting heads a little bit on the music style. They wanted more of punk, and I wanted more of a punk metal grunge mix. And the other guitarist, from what I could hear him playing, he could sing okay, social singer. Nothing like Lane. Nobody could ever sing like Lane. Nobody's ever been able to sing like Lane, in my opinion. Lane Staley. sad what happened to him. I knew him before he got into the hard stuff, so he was a good kid. You know, he was a good person. He couldn't get off the stuff. He just couldn't get off it. I feel guilty that I didn't remain ties with him because I have this weird feeling like maybe I could have helped him, but maybe he was unhelpable because his own family members and his parents and all that stuff. But I want to keep this on the regret side, so maybe that's part of the regret, but one of the regrets. But so anyways, we're on tour in California. Get the phone call from my girlfriend. Now, what happened was me and my girlfriend went to Planned Parenthood 7 months before that. And back in those days, you could go to Planned Parenthood. The girl would get a free gynecological exam. You got a 6 months free birth control pills and a follow-up gynecological exam. So we both went to Planned Parenthood and got her on birth control pill. So I get a call from California, and she's like, "What do you want to name the kid?" And I'm like, "What kid? What do you mean? What do you mean by that?" And she's like, "I'm pregnant with your kid." And so I talked to the band because we were on tour in Cal. I said, you know, since I was the second guitarist and Pete was already the main, I said, "Can I head back to? Is it okay to head back? I have a family thing to deal with." So I headed back, hung out for a little while, had dinner, walked in the bathroom, looked at the birth control pills. There was 5.5 months of birth control pills left. She took birth control pills. I think the first week is fake pills anyways. So she stopped taking birth control pills on purpose without asking me permission. So I'm just banging away, partying away. And she's pregnant with my kid. She deliberately got herself pregnant with my kid without my consent. So, at that point, I have a decision, I think it was beyond the abortion point. But, you should know what country I'm in by that song. If you're from that country, I'm not in the States or Canada or Europe. So anyways, what happened was the band gave me, they were already on edge because I liked a slightly different style, and they said, either you go with the family or you go with the band. So either I'm going to become a father. At that point, we knew I was going to become a father and raise a kid, or I was going to go on tour with the band. They made me draw the line there. They forced me on the spot. So what I did was I decided to do the father thing and become the father. And I had to sign away my name, the song, release all rights because they got signed. And I had to sign away all my rights to all the songs that I wrote and co-wrote on a piece of paper for the music label, for them to sign on. So they went on to make money off of my songs or whatever. It's all good. It's done. It's in the past. But I signed away my rights. I can still hear my songs, and I'm not going to tell you what they were, and I'm not going to tell you what band they were in, because when I signed away my name, my authorship, everything concerned with my songwriting abilities, that means I sign away my name too. Like if you look on a record label or tapes back then, you'd say so-and-so was a singer, so-and-so was the first guitarist, so-and-so was the lead guitarist, so-and-so was the drummer, so-and-so was the bass player. So I I am Zip on Zilch. So I signed away all my rights, all my musical rights, all my residual rights for the music. That was the shoulda, woulda, couldas that I look back that if I would have stayed in that band, tweaked the song a little bit, tweaked the songs a little bit, and made them more marketable, maybe I could have cashed in on the grunge movement like Soundgarden, Nirvana, and Alice in Chains did. Actually, I could have, yeah, because what happened was, even though I committed to the Father, I still wanted to do music, so I started a few bands after that. The band after that was called Possession Sound, and we played at the Music Bank in the Ballard Bridge, and you could hear the music through the walls, like I said, the bleed through a little bit and all that. And we would have people come up and listen to our music and want to start talking to us and everything. So it was crazy. I could have probably gotten fame in that band, but should have, would have, could have. So I had a musical. I was in the right place at the right time musically. There's nothing else to do, and either in dreary, miserable, horrible weather, what do? You watch DVDs or you bone, to say it so it's YouTube acceptable. Bone or watch DVDs, or you play music or listen to music or watch TV. When the weather's miserable, you don't really want to go outside. So we were musicians, so our thing was we would just do music, and we'd play like for free. We'd do garage, we'd do shows in houses, in basements and stuff, and at parties and all that stuff. We did freebies, and then we did bars and clubs and nightclubs and all that. And I mean, I'm glad I have a kid and all that stuff. And the kid turned out all right, but then part of me regrets that I didn't pursue that. That was a hot market. That was a once in a lifetime opportunity. That will never come back. I could play grunge music or that type of music, I think, at my age. It'd be kind of funny, but until I'm blue in the face. But I don't, I think those days are gone. The grunge scene is gone. The rock scene, like you've seen, like these huge shows that used to fill these huge stadiums, now they just fill smaller venues and everything. So I think rock has I think music has kind of gotten weird, actually, to be honest, straight up honest. I don't like most of the music now. Call me an old fogey or whatever, but I don't like most of the music. And then also part of it's my fault is I don't listen to most of the music right now. Also, I can play a synth. The tube sound, I love the tube sound. I was playing through Laney's, Laney, when I was in those bands, tube amps. For me, you can't reproduce the sound of a good micro beer in a tube amp. That is just heaven to my ears. Is a micro beer and a doobie and music through a tube amp. Some hard, loud driving punk or grunge or rock. I love that sound. They have modern. I like the flange and the other effects and the delays and the echoes and the wahs and all that stuff. And like Hendrix was famous, Jimi Hendrix. He's one of my idols, of course. Hendrix, and he's from that area. Hendrix, he was a lefty. I was a lefty, but I was forced to go righty, so I went right. But Hendrix was just phenomenal, and some phenomenal bands came out of that area, and actually some famous singers came out of that area, and a few actors came out of that area, and all that stuff. So um, I guess that's my regret, is that and I can still do it, but I feel like it's gone. Like if I started up a grunge or rock band or whatever, or anything, and picked up, where I live, I can't play anyways. But like it seems like it doesn't seem like doable anymore. But I back in the scene in the gold rush when Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and Nirvana were all growing huge names. I mean, I would have guys from record labels come up with a gold card or platinum and say, I'll buy you whatever you want, whatever you want. I just want the lowdown on this band or that band or this band or that band, because I was in the scene, so I knew the behind the scenes situation of the bands, like how long they'd been together, which musicians, how long they'd been in the bands, who composed what songs, and I knew inside information to the bands. So the record labels all fled to Seattle like a big flood, like they all got in a bus. All the big bands, all the big labels were up shopping around looking for, if you were from Seattle, you were it. All you had to do was just say you're from Seattle and you were gold already. I mean, you were already signed basically if you sounded halfway decent. It was like this huge music gold rush, and I was there in it, and I didn't capitalize off it, and so I kind of regret that. I don't think I could produce that. I would have to relearn guitar again because I haven't played for so long, and compose and write, and I don't know. I feel like I've missed the boat. I don't think that will ever happen again. But that was an interesting part of history. I feel lucky and privileged to be a part of all of that, and I still love hearing Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Nirvana, and Jimi Hendrix. Of course, I like Led Zeppelin and Rush and Aerosmith and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and a lot of different rock bands. But I'm partial to those because they're from my terrain. So I got to see them all from starting out in the basement. Nothing better to do, just terrible weather, let's go jam. I got to see them go from 0 to 1,000,000 or whatever. And I don't think I could recreate it, or I would. I'd pick up an axe and I'd start jamming and start writing again, but I think those days are gone. The music scene's changed. And like I said, I don't like what they're putting out now. I think what they're putting out is what the label, they're going for the market, just like movies. They're going for the market rather than the artistic quality. It's just my personal opinion. I like disco, I like techno, I like new wave, I like a variety of a lot of different musics. I even like some classical. Like Canon and D, Canon in D on a violin. I love that. So I have a broad spectrum of music I like, but my roots are in hard, loud, driving, overdriven amps. I had an Eddie Van Halen. I think it was a 5150 was the amp. And I think at the time it had more preamps. He designed it himself. And it had more preamp tubes than any other amp at the time. So I had, what tubes did I use? So I drove the 5150 like crazy with the 6 preamp tubes for overdrive, and then groove tubes. Yeah. So that was one opportunity I blew, and that's the last one on that, and so I'm going to get out of that at this time, and I'll get into another one later.